Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Juggling Balls podcast. I'm your host, Stuart, and I've got Millie with me.
Hello there.
Today's podcast is going to be all about the NFL. There's been a few interesting stories coming out this week with the draft and the return of the Gronk. So we're going to discuss those in a little bit more detail shortly. Just to do a bit of housekeeping before we start. We are now up on YouTube, Spotify, and as of a few days ago, we're now up on iTunes. So if you do give us a listen, please give us a subscribe, and thanks for listening to the pod last week, because there were a few that did listen, so we do appreciate it. And we'll get started. So with the draft, there's been a few interesting stories that have come out of it. And basically, I was looking to go through those with you today, Millie. So I think we'll start at the top of the draft with Tua going to the Dolphins. And I just wanted to get your take on what this means for the Dolphins going forward.
Well, at the start of the college season last year, when it started the NFL season last year, the whole point of the top of the draft was everyone should tank for Tua. That was the whole slogan for the crap teams of last year. And the only reason he didn't go number one was because he had this massive injury. So I think the big question is, will he stay healthy? He didn't he had a couple of injuries when he was at Alabama. I think it's the first time an Alabama quarterback has gone this early in a long time as well. But if he stays healthy, he will be a hit. He is he would have been easily the number one pick if he had stayed healthy last year. So I think, given how competitive the AFC East should be going forward, I absolutely think it's a great pick, and I think he will do very well.
Yeah, I think all the signs before the injuries pointed that he was going to be a good quarterback for whoever he ended up at. He was also quite entertaining to watch as well. If you watch back on some of the college games he was involved in, and this particular run when he won the championship with Alabama, I think it was very entertaining stuff. So I think anybody, especially Miami in the situation that they're in at the moment, would love to have someone like that who can provide a bit of a spark to the franchise and really give them a rocket to sort of bring life back to the Miami Dolphins, because I think it's something they've desperately been looking for. And as much as I do like watching Fitzpatrick on his day when he's actually involved in the game and actually wanting to play, they really need someone to sort of grab it by the scruff of the neck and lead them forward and get them back to the heyday.
I mean, if your answer to whatever question you're posing is Ryan Fitzpatrick, I am worried what question you're actually asking. Not to say he's a bad quarterback. He will lead you to anywhere between 5 and 8 wins, probably, depending on what talent you've got around him.
Yeah.
That doesn't really do anything. That's not bad enough, really, to get a top 3 pick, and it's not good enough to be anywhere close to playoffs. So you need to take a swing at upgrading him when you can.
No, I 100% agree. I wasn't really asking a question about Fitzpatrick. It was more like, on his day, he is entertaining when he wants to be involved, and he's 100% in the game. But I think you need someone like Tua really to sort of get the Dolphins going. And I think there was a lot of interest in Tua. I think people like the Chargers were interested in him, especially with them going into a new stadium and wanting to sort of have an attraction to get them going again. But again, Miami were high up enough in the draft to be able to get a hold of him, and I think it will be a good move for them going forward.
Yeah, I mean, if Miami hadn't picked Tua at 5, the Chargers would have picked him at 6.
Yeah, they would have got him straight away. They would have nabbed him. Yeah.
They were always taking a quarterback after Philip Rivers left in free agency. So it was basically Burrow was always going to go number 1. Yeah. And then it's just, what were Miami going to do? They decided to take Tua, so Herbert goes to the Chargers. So it's...
Absolutely. So moving on from Tua then, I think if not the most interesting, or what's brought up the most debate headline-wise, is Jordan Love being drafted at number 26 to the Packers. Obviously, there's been a lot of questions as to what this could mean for the Packers going forward, especially with the fact that they've got Aaron Rodgers still there. He's not looking like he's going to retire anytime soon. Obviously, he is on the older side at 36, but again, he's still got the arm. It doesn't look like he's declining in any way, shape or form. So a lot of question marks have risen with Jordan Love being drafted to them. So, just to get your take on that, Millie, what do you think of Jordan Love going to the Packers and what that could mean for the future?
I understand why they picked him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand why they traded up 4 spots to get him. Which is
because they traded with the Dolphins, didn't they?
Yeah.
They traded 4 spots to
They
go
traded
with the
Dolphins, and like immediately after, so the people they jumped to get there were Seattle, Baltimore, and Tennessee.
Okay.
All of which are pretty set at quarterback, at least for the immediate couple of years. So I'm not entirely sure why they traded up to get someone who is going to sit on the bench for 2 years.
Right.
Unless Rodgers demands a trade, which I can't see happening. I think it's interesting that Rodgers went public in saying that it could be nice for Green Bay to draft a skills position like a running back or a receiver.
Yeah.
I mean, technically they have drafted someone in a skills position. It's just his long-term replacement.
Yeah. I think I saw, for me personally, I saw a lot of parallels between this move and with the Patriots, getting Garoppolo in, and almost that being Belichick's sort of guy to replace Brady eventually, which I think was Belichick's original plan, but obviously it got to a point where Garoppolo was ready to go in and take over the reins, but Brady wasn't done yet. So I don't necessarily see that. Maybe might not be the case, because you never know if Rodgers is there in 2 or 3 years' time, if he's not banged up, or the Packers decide to go with Love in the end. But I did see some parallels with that. Not necessarily saying they were exactly the same, but in terms of where the quarterbacks were at and in terms of the stages of the career.
The thing with the Packers is their whole ethos is homegrown talent. And even their general managers are in the team through scouting or player development or something, and then rise to be general manager. So their GM at the moment worked under the guy who drafted Favre and the guy who drafted Rodgers, and they drafted Rodgers and sat for 3 years behind Favre. So you can understand why they've done this, because that is the team's ethos and that's how they work. I just not entirely sure they had to panic as such and go, "Oh, we definitely must get this guy," because if you're drafting someone this high and trading up for him, you must quite like him. And
that I think you don't move up for somebody and then get them if you don't rate them in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
You don't make that move if you're not that interested.
Yeah, but the whole point of trading up is you're worried that someone above you is going to take them. And I listed off the teams that were scheduled and who ended up taking players after, like in between where they were and where they moved up to. And that's not to say that another team could have traded and jumped them for them. I'm just surprised by it. I did not think that they would go quarterback in this draft. If we were talking 12 months time and Rodgers is humming and hawing, and it makes sense to draft a replacement.
Yeah,
I just
depending on if obviously Rodgers is on the decline and he hasn't had a great season, then
it's not even that. Like obviously they know more information than about how he's feeling and what his plans are. Like Rodgers is quite a private character. I would say he doesn't normally go out and beat the drum as much, but I would presume everyone in the organisation knows whereabouts what he's thinking.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of Rodgers, though, I think, if anything, this will give him a bit more fuel in the tank for the next season or so, just to obviously prove to everybody that this isn't a guy coming to replace him immediately. He's still Aaron Rodgers that we all know and have seen over the past however many seasons, and that he's obviously still got it. I think, obviously, the other thing to look at as well is if Jordan Love is the long-term project and the future of the Packers. I think if you actually look at obviously the past couple of quarterbacks, you've had Aaron Rodgers here long term, and then before that it was Brett Favre. And I think if you look at how the Packers are probably looking at it, they're probably looking at it as having, I think they had Favre around 10 to 15 years, was it something like that? And then they've had Aaron Rodgers for a similar amount of time, and then Jordan Love's coming in with a lot of eyes on him and obviously a high level of prospects to his name. So I think that obviously they're looking at potentially 3 quarterbacks they've drafted who are potentially spanning almost 40 years combined together.
Yeah.
And I think that's obviously something that's probably why they went for him when they did.
Yeah, I mean, like, if the plan is to get someone to sit behind Rodgers for a couple of years and for him to be a 10-year starter, then yes, this move makes sense. And if that happens, then yes, we can all go, yes, that was a brilliant move.
Mm-hmm.
I get, like, there's just opportunity cost issues with it, with trading up to get someone like that, even if you like him, you know you're not going to use for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Most Super Bowl winning teams of this era, Patriots discarded, but then every other team that gets a good run together is built around cheap young talent. The way the rookie wage scale is you hit as many draft picks as you can in a short space of time, and while they're all on a compressed salary compared to what they've get in an open market, you can then get veterans around there and have a great team. You're wasting 2 years at the most prime position by sitting him. It's a weird move to make now.
Yeah, in terms of the very short term, it is a strange move to make because you don't know. I suppose the hovering questions are: is there something not quite right with Rodgers, or is he? Are they seeing something? Have they seen something in the last few months of the season where they've thought we need to probably prepare for this a little bit sooner than we were expecting?
Yeah.
But I mean, in terms of the build, obviously, I don't think there's a question that Jordan Love's obviously someone that they can build around the future. It's just how soon is that future really going to be a reality if Aaron Rodgers is still at the top of his game? I suppose that's the main question going into the next season of how is that dynamic. But then again, we could be looking at it as a 1 or 2 seasons he's developing and then he's going from there. But yeah, I think that's where we're at really in terms of that story. So we'll move on shortly into the Gronk part of the podcast. I'm just going to take a quick break, so we'll just pause it there for a second. And hey presto, just like that, we're back in the room. So we'll discuss the return of the Gronk and get into that now. So unless you've been living under the rock for the past few days, basically Gronk is back in the NFL. He's decided to come out of retirement for a short span of an entire year. So yeah, basically he's announced he's coming out of retirement and he wants to reunite with Brady at the Bucs. So essentially what that means for the Patriots is that they're having to trade Gronkowski to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Sorry, just getting the names mixed up there. So in terms of that, obviously Gronk is one of the better known personalities of the NFL over the past few seasons. Really, he's quite an over the top personality that everyone who is a follower of the NFL knows about, and he's obviously one of the more highly rated tight ends of the past 10 years. You would say he's probably the best, if not top 2 or 3, definitely at least. So for Tampa getting a hold of Gronk to obviously reunite with Brady, how do you think this looks for them going forward? Do you think this is a combination that can work to anywhere near the level that it has done in the past? Or do you think it's something that's doomed to fail or something in between?
I mean, it's not doomed to fail. I wouldn't be that negative straight off the bat. That's not like me at all.
That was a bit of an extreme statement, that one, but obviously on both ends of the spectrum.
I know. I think it entirely depends what Gronk's been doing for this past year in terms of recovering from injuries. The 2018 season he had, he was very hobbled, I think is probably the right word. He just didn't seem right, and he wasn't the red zone target that he was for the previous 5 years. So if that Gronkowski goes to Tampa, then I'm not entirely sure he's that much better than the receiving tight ends that they've already got. The one thing that Gronk is absolutely amazing at, which goes unnoticed by people who already focus on fantasy football, is he is one of the best blocking tight ends ever.
Yeah.
And that part of the game should be still very much within him.
Mm-hmm.
And so if Brady has wanted to get him more as a security blanket more than anything else,
Yeah.
then that will work.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's kind of a no situation for Tampa. I think this
Yeah.
because it's not because they had a young, highly regarded, is in inverted commas, tight end in OJ Howard, but
Mm-hmm.
he got pretty much into Bruce Arians' doghouse last season,
Mm-hmm.
which for someone who only is interested in fantasy football like myself, was a bit annoying when they drafted him rather high. But um, Arians likes using tight ends in his scheme. Gronkowski is a good fit for how the Bucks will want to play.
Yeah.
As long as he's healthy, and
As long as he's healthy.
and that's the key. If
Mm-hmm.
he is, if he's better health wise than he was in his last season, then
Mm-hmm.
it'll work.
Mm-hmm.
If he can't play 2 games back to back,
Yeah.
or if he's, or like it might be a case of he might be on a very restricted snap count for the first half
Mm-hmm.
of the year,
Yeah.
in the hope that okay, if we get to the playoffs, we need him fit. So
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to risk him getting injured at the early part of the year.
Yeah.
We'll let him work his way up fitness wise, because the thing is, we don't know how long the season's actually going to be.
Yeah.
And
We don't know. Yeah, we don't know obviously when it's going to start up or anything.
Yeah,
like that.
it might be a case of it's only like an 8 game season or something like that. Then
Yeah, I think
it might take him 4 or 5 games to get back into the swing of things. In which case, you're already gearing up to the end of playoffs, and then it might work.
yeah, potentially. I think there's one. I think the benefit of Gronkowski coming back when he has come back is that he's probably coming back at a good time. That if, say, for example, everything goes back to normal and we do start the NFL season in September like it normally does start, I think there is that chance that he's probably coming back into it. He will obviously be coming back in rusty, but there's obviously the argument that could be made that all the other teams are probably going to be starting on the same foot. There's not anyone who's going to have sort of any sort of major advantage of anybody in the aspect of that no one's going to have really a full training period like they would normally do. So normally you'd see obviously teams coming out in March and April getting ready to train with each other and have a full 3-4 month block, go into pre-season, have a few practice games, and then get the full season underway. I think a lot of teams are probably going to be in the same scenario of they've had minimal training, they've had minimal sort of gelling time, and I think that'll help Brady and the Bucks and Gronk in terms of getting themselves acclimatized, because that means they've got the full season to be on the same step as everybody else. That's how I personally view it, because I don't think that anyone's going to have a full training camp and get themselves as sharp as they would want to be going into the start of the season.
The problem with that is, yes, Brady and Gronk know each other well and know each other's games well, but they're learning a brand new playbook.
Yeah.
And the easiest way to learn a playbook is through reps. And if you can't, if you're isolated from one another, it's very difficult to, like, you can study it and you can learn what you're supposed to do and you can run your routes in isolation, I suppose. But it's very difficult to get that cohesion if you're not on the field.
Yeah, but and whilst that obviously, for me, that's obviously I think you're spot on. You can apply that obviously to the situation of the Bucks, with them in fact having a new quarterback who's never played for anyone else other than the team he's been with for the past 20 years, and Gronk, who's been out of the game for a year. But I think you can also level that at a lot of the teams around them who they're going to be competing with in their division and on their side of things, that whether it's they've got new quarterbacks in or they've got the new players in, there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be in, not necessarily in the exact same scenario, but are going to have obviously new players coming in or new players taking over the reins from people who've either retired or left to go elsewhere. And I think there's going to be a lot of teams in the similar scenario where they're not going to necessarily have gel together, and it really is going to be about who can sort of kick off straight away and obviously hit the ground running and build from there. I suppose the benefit is obviously if you've got a full season of 16 games, you've got 16 games to get yourself out of the rust and obviously build a win towards the end, because I think there'll be a lot of teams that are sort of in that middle pack, and it'll obviously, as most seasons do tend to, you've got a lot of teams in the middle pack, and those teams will step up towards the end. I think for me personally, I see the Buccaneers being one of those teams that does manage to gel because of the fact that you've got Bruce Arians, who is by all terms and recognition an absolute legend to work with in terms of his quarterbacks, and has had great experience working with quarterbacks through the years. And then you've got the fact that Brady is probably coming into this more on the mental side of things rejuvenated, because of the fact that he's broke away from the Patriots and he's got something to prove this season. Whilst last season, from the interviews he's done recently, I'm taking this next point from, is he was very much in the mindset of he knew he was leaving, and he was just looking forward to the next chapter really. So I think from those point of views, I think those elements are going to be what for me tips the Bucs going into a potential playoff spot and race to get to the Super Bowl maybe.
I think the only counter to that is the division that Tampa finds itself in.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Atlanta and you've got New Orleans,
mm-hmm.
who are very settled.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're talking about cohesion and getting rust off,
mm-hmm.
it will. If it's a short season, it's whoever hits the ground running.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not to say Tampa definitely won't.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably side more with the settled teams.
Yeah.
I would give a slight edge to in that case because they're not exactly starting from scratch.
Yeah.
But
mm-hmm.
if you've got very good players, they will learn how to play very to their level very quickly because they're very good players. So it is a fascinating. I don't want to say experiment, but it's a fascinating thing to hopefully we'll be able to see.
Yeah, see what the outcome of it is. I mean, in terms of just looping back to what you were saying about Gronk and obviously what Gronk's going to appear, I know obviously there's a lot of question marks about his physical attributes in terms of is he back to 100% or is he near to that with a year's rest. But I don't necessarily think it was just about the physical side of things. Obviously that was probably about 70 or 80% of the reason why he's retired. But I think there was a large chunk of it would go towards his mental side of it as well. And what I mean by that is you always hear about Belichick and his regiment and how stuck to it he was. You could never step outside the line. You had to toe the line. And I think for someone like Gronk, after a while, it would start to wear you down. Because obviously we know Gronk's a big personality and he likes to do things his own way. I mean, if you look at his year off, he was just presenting and hosting WrestleMania. So like he likes to beat to his own drum essentially. And I think if you're in a regiment like Belichick's, whilst obviously the winning makes it easier, I think eventually after however many years he was there, it's going to have worn him down. And I think probably taking the break, knowing that he was probably going to come back, was probably more not as heavily influenced by the mental side of things, but I think it was a factor in his decision making for that. So I think he could be seeing a rejuvenated and refreshed mentally on the mental side of things from Gronk.
Yeah, I mean that's entirely plausible. I don't for someone like Belichick, I think he would argue. I think the argument it's quite easy to make that because of the regiment, because everyone is treated the same way. You do your job, you get your results. Everyone is treated the same, and that's why he's been so successful in New England.
Yeah.
If you don't want to buy in and or your effectiveness drops below a level that Belichick finds substandard, you are free to leave. So, like, there's been stuff about Belichick actually agreed to send Gronkowski to Detroit before the 2018 season.
Yeah.
Like, Gronk essentially vetoed, from what I can gather from it.
Yeah, because I think I've heard that as well in the past few days, and I think that essentially the detail of it was that Gronk would rather retire that season with the Patriots than go to Detroit and go elsewhere.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to finish with Brady essentially.
Yeah.
And obviously the outcome of that was they won a Super Bowl unfortunately, against your Rams.
Yes.
In the fashion that they did, but obviously he got the fairy tale ending, and obviously he knew he wasn't going to be wanted definitely after that extra season, so he may as well leave on the high that he had. But I think obviously if you look at the situation that Brady's got into and he's got pieces around him, and then you add Gronk to it, I think that is probably what's helped prize them back out of retirement.
Yeah, I mean, like,
so
from the sounds of piecing stuff from all over the place, Gronk wanted to play with Brady, just not New England.
Yeah,
Brady's now no longer in New England, so he wants to join his mate, and like, that's essentially the story.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that being said, I know we've basically touched upon what we think or how we both feel what that could mean for Tampa this season. Obviously, depending on how many games there are and how long they get to gel. But in terms of moving away from Tampa, do you think in terms of these moves that they've made, in terms of removing Brady from the equation, trading Gronk to get, I think it was a 4th or a 5th round pick?
It was 4th.
It was a 4th round pick, yeah. So do you think in terms of the Patriots, in the long run, do you think these are going to be good moves for them going forward, or do you think this is just the start of a whole rebuilding process for Belichick?
I mean, can the answer to that be both?
It can be, yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, let's be fair. Brady was not the best quarterback in the league, and hasn't last season, and hasn't been for a good few years.
No.
And I think you could probably argue that most of the Super Bowls that New England have won have been on the back of Brady being very good, and the defense being absolutely brilliant.
Well, especially, I mean, what did the defense in recent memory? You just have to look at the last Super Bowl and look at the score itself, and know it was a very defensive game and a top defensive performance from him. So
yeah, and I think that Belichick has been preparing for either a substantial drop off from Brady or Brady not being there for quite a while. Like we talked about them drafting Garoppolo, and Belichick knows the value of having a very good backup quarterback, because that's essentially why they drafted Brady. Because Brady was never supposed to be this. That's the thing. He was the 6th round pick. It's like this career for him wasn't supposed to happen. And so I trust Belichick to work out how he's going to win games.
Yeah.
Whether that's with a lesser quarterback and having a very stingy defense and having a running game, which is what they had when Brady first started. Those first, so the Super Bowl that they won against the Rams back in 2001, they essentially controlled they basically controlled the clock. That's how they won it. The Rams' offense that year was we will score a touchdown against you in 90 seconds, whether you like it or not. So Belichick went, okay, if that's the case, you're gonna have the ball for like 12 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like it might just revert back to trying to get that sort of game plan. Like we've seen Tennessee essentially in the playoffs this year, essentially bring that game style to play, and it's just like, yes, we will control the ball. We're not going to turn it over. We've got a monster of a running back, and we are going to run and run and run at you. You know what's coming. Can you stop us?
Yeah, I think for me, in terms of the Patriots, my main question is how long can Belichick keep getting the players that he gets in? Not because obviously Belichick's never been one to get big names, and he's never been one to go after the top round picks. He's always been after the diamonds in the rough, and molding them into the players that he wants them. My question is obviously, because he is at the point he is at his career, how long can he keep doing that for, and is he going to be able to do it as well as he's been doing it for the past 20 odd years that he's been with the Patriots?
I think the answer to that is as long as he wants.
Yeah.
That's how long he'll stay. I think he probably can decide when he wants to leave New England, unless something drastic happens.
Yeah, I think Belichick's earned the right to leave whenever he wants. I think my question mainly comes from, does he have the ability to be able to produce and get those players at that level that he expects and wants to see at a consistent basis, like he has been doing, obviously, plus the past 20 years. Because last year, whilst people can level at Brady that he wasn't that great, obviously you have to look at the players around Brady as well in terms of the weapons that he had. I mean, the defense was stingy as it always has been, and had a couple of bad games, which in the grand scheme of things isn't something to go into panic mode about. But in terms of the weapons that Brady had around him, he didn't exactly have much to feed the ball to.
I think there's two different arguments there. There's one that Belichick, has never really spent that much on skill positions. It's quite like the Packers mold, really.
Mm-hmm.
They don't like to spend a lot on wide receivers or running backs, really, because Belichick's idea is you can find them anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that go right at the top of the draft are probably very, very, very good, and it'd be nice to have them. But if you're good, you're never going to be at the top of the draft. So why waste a bottom of the first round pick on someone when you can probably wait a couple of rounds to get someone probably just as good?
Mm-hmm.
That's the argument that Belichick is, and that's the theory that Belichick has had, and for most of the time he can make it work. Whether that's through schemes or whether that's through quarterback play.
Yeah, the results obviously speak for themselves on how he's done it. The results speak for themselves, clearly.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Belichick can find whichever quarterback is next, if he can find one that he likes, one that he can build around quickly, whoever that may be, I can't see that there'll be a small drop off, obviously, but I can't see him going into full rebuild mode. They'll still be competing for the AFC East this year. That's my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I'm 50-50 as to whether or not they're gonna have the results that I always struggle with the Patriots, because on one side I always think that there's no reason why they can't get to the playoffs, but then the question is, in the division really hasn't given them much competition to be able to not get to the playoffs. But then the question is are the Bills going to take another step? Are the Dolphins going to improve in any way, shape or form with Tua coming in for his first season? Those are the questions in my mind, and that's why I find it very difficult to make a judgment call on the Patriots, because I have faith in Belichick to be able to find a way to win, because he's even in the most dire situations, he's found a way just to grind out the result and just get it over the line. But then on the other side of the coin is how much of the other teams around him going to win, not necessarily against the Patriots themselves, but against the teams that they're going to have to face in their division as well. So yeah, for me, I'm 50-50 as to whether or not the Patriots are going to make the playoffs, because I do think there's arguments there for the likes of the Bills, and for not necessarily saying the Dolphins are going to make the playoffs, but to make a step up in comparison to what they've done, obviously, over the past few seasons. So yeah, I'm a bit 50-50 on that one. I think I probably need to see the Patriots maybe in pre-season and see how the new recruits are looking, and seeing how he's got them playing and how that system looks, before I can make a definitive decision on it. But again, I wouldn't bet against Belichick to pull something out of the hat once again. I mean, look at the situations he's been in the past 20 years and what he's done. You can't rule him out of it at all.
Yeah, I mean, Buffalo last year was essentially a poor version of the Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
They had a good defense, but not as good as the Patriots. And they had a half-decent offense that wasn't as good as the Patriots. And the Patriots' offense wasn't that great last year. Mm-hmm. So you're asking them to make quite a bit of a leap for New England not to be able to challenge them.
Well, yeah. I mean, in terms of the leap, in terms of them improving, yes. To improve on what the Patriots have been in the past, yes, it would be quite a leap. But what I'm thinking is the step down from the Patriots going to be a big enough step down for them, and the Bills increasing to the point where there is that gap there between the two of them? Not saying there's a huge gap, but enough of a gap for the Bills to get that cushion that they'd probably be looking for, because it's not like the Bills were in dire straits or playing terribly at all last season. I mean, they have the ability to win games and enough of them to get into contention. So it just depends on what that step up's going to look like.
The Bills weren't terrible. Yeah, I'm not saying they were. I'm just saying that I think their record flattered them a bit.
Okay.
I think if you gave the Bills a much harder schedule than what they got, because if you think the Bills managed to get 4 games against the Jets and the Dolphins last year, if you put them in another division, they probably don't get to 10 wins.
Yeah.
So that's the nature of it. But
yeah, that's the nature of it. But I suppose we just have to wait and see. Again, going back to the whole Tampa conversation of what we touched upon of what the season's actually going to look like, because who knows if we're going to have 16 games or anything close to that, or if even the season is going to be able to go ahead. I mean, I would assume there's going to be some shape or form of behind closed doors games at least. Hopefully, fingers crossed, touch wood, and all that stuff. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Really, I suppose
I think it'll be very difficult to get NFL games behind closed doors, because the stadiums that are used are predominantly used for NFL and not really much else. Yeah. But also there's just so many people already involved. It's not like a football match where you've got a match day squad of 18 and you've got a manager and a few coaches that are there on the day. And so you've got probably got about 20 or 30-ish people per side. An NFL squad on a day is probably somewhere around 100. And if you're already getting 220-ish probably people in close proximity for 3 and a bit hours, that's a very high risk thing to do, even if you don't add spectators in there. So I think football is one of those sports that I don't think works in isolation, because you can't really play it in isolation.
Yeah, I mean, my point was that at the very least, I think if it came as a last resort and they were desperate to get the games to have something going on, then I think behind closed doors is probably something that they would at least. I think that's the last option. But I think I agree with what you're saying, that it's a very difficult thing to contain. To have 200 odd people, that's the players, obviously the staff and everything that goes with it, on the sidelines, and then be able to say, right, go play football. But then there's also the argument of, well, you can keep them contained and have them all separated and have them tested and everything like that and make sure everything's okay beforehand. But again, you've got 200 people there. There's so many variables of that could go wrong.
Yeah, it's like if one person on a team has a positive test, what do you do?
Exactly. Yeah.
And that,
all interesting questions. Yeah.
that is the Pandora's box of any sport starting up. Okay, what do you do if one person comes back positive? What do you do?
Yeah. Well, I think the nearest we've got possibly at the moment to sport coming back is the Bundesliga coming back potentially at the beginning of May. They're waiting for the go-ahead from the German government to say you can go ahead. I think the plans from the Bundesliga are that it's going to be the 2 teams, the staff of coaches on the benches, and then they're going to have, I think, something like 300 spectators in the crowd, or something to that number, that will be allowed in the stadium, and then basically go from there and see what happens. But again, that's waiting for the German government to give that as a go-ahead and let that be allowed. But the players have been training with each other. It's just a case of whether or not they can go ahead and start playing games behind closed doors. Well, pretty much behind closed doors, other than 300 or so people.
I have a joke lined up, but I'm not going to say it.
No, don't say it. Not worth it.
Not worth it.
So, on that note then, we've pretty much covered everything we'll cover off with that. So I think we'll leave it there. Again, thanks for giving us a listen, and giving us your time to obviously listen to the podcast. We are on YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes, and working on more places to be added to as well. So give us a like, share, and subscribe, and all that good stuff. And thanks for listening. And we'll speak to you soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.